Welcome to First Light, the podcast where we explore what it really means to rise and transform. I'm your host, Chris Keller, and today we're joined by someone who embodies both professional excellence and a deep commitment to community. Jeff Adelman is a Florida Bar board-certified civil trial lawyer and also currently running for the Coral Springs City Commission, Seat 4. From the courtroom to the campaign trail, Jeff is on a mission to advocate for transparency, accountability, and community-first leadership. Today, we'll talk about his decades of legal experience, his media presence, and his lifelong roots in Coral Springs are shaping the next chapter of his journey. Jeff, I want to thank you for joining me here today on First Light. I know you've been practicing law for over 20 years. You're board certified in civil trial law. And so I want to kind of take you back to what took you to personal injury in the first place and how you got into law.
Well, I am a second generation lawyer. Growing up, my dad was a personal injury lawyer and, I idolized my dad. So I thought about it. But quite frankly, Chris, my first option when I was at FSU, I was planning on being a hockey announcer, sports announcer. So this was kind of a second choice, but I used some of my skills that I developed doing radio and TV to incorporate that into trial work. So I don't know if you knew that or not, but that's something, that's a fun thing I did, and probably one of the reasons I personally got into podcasting many years ago as well.
You definitely got the voice for it. I wish I had that voice, but let's talk about growing up working for, in a family law practice and how that kind of, shaped your approach to client advocacy and trial work, working with your dad.
Well, as you know, when you represent people who are injured against the big Goliath insurance companies and corporations, you feel like you're fighting for the underdog. You're fighting for people who wouldn't have a chance otherwise. And I saw my dad do that. And I actually worked for him a little bit in high school, a little bit in college, and throughout law school. So I saw how he did it, and I saw the relationships that he would build with his clients. And that resonated very deeply with me because I'm very passionate about what I do. I like helping people. And I was exposed to what that looked like at an early age, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, I know of your 20 plus years in practice, you've taken on a lot of leadership, been involved in multiple professional organizations like the Palm Beach County Justice Association and ABOTA. I know you've been recognized and received a lot of awards. So, kind of take us through your leadership experience and what kind of lessons you've learned along those 20 plus years through these different organizations.
Well, the legal leadership positions started when I was on the Florida Bar Client Security Fund. And I was the chair after serving for 5 years. My last year I was the chair of that committee, which gives money to people who have been fleeced or had their money stolen by a small percentage of lawyers. A lot of people don't know this, but some of our bar dues actually go into the trough for this committee so that these people, while they're not able to be made whole most of the time, they're able to get something back. So I enjoy doing that. And then I was asked to get into the executive board for ABOTA Fort Lauderdale, the American Board of Trial Advocates, which you're required to have a certain amount of trials. People have to vouch for you to make sure you're not a complete dirtbag or anything like that. And I was flattered to be asked by David Strong to do that. Little did I know that my tenure as president would fall in 2020 when the world shut down. And Chris, you probably remember from the Palm Beach County Justice Association, I was working with Adriana Gonzalez to put our resources together and get Zoom out there because, again, in my experience with Zoom for podcasting, we had seminars with over 400 people throughout the state. We had the judges out there giving them a platform to tell us what they want us to do. And they were able to get hearings on Zoom, depositions, mediations, maybe not trials, but can you imagine if we weren't able to do any of that during the rest of 2020? I mean, we were still able to resolve cases, get things done in a large part because of the Zoom, Teams, and other platforms, but it hadn't really been done before. But we were really pushing with the judges, and thank goodness for the leadership of Chief Judge Jack Tudor, Carol Lisa Phillips, Judge Krista Marks in Palm Beach, Jennifer Bailey in Miami. It was really an all hands on deck situation, and because of what we did, I was offered the ability to be the president for the entire state, FLUBO, which is one of the biggest honors I've ever had in my legal career.
Well, let's talk about that and how you really, now the legal landscape has forever been changed because of COVID, and the way we advocate for our clients and the way we can spend our time is all now changed. And you played such an instrumental part about that. Now it's crazy to think, but we're 5 years post all
Yeah.
that. And so talk about how that lasting impact that going through that has now had on the legal industry and on advocacy for our clients, and obviously the role that you played in getting this there, because obviously it could have gone back to the way things were, right? We could have just stopped it, but for the most part, it's remained and maintained.
Well, it's one of those things. I think it was a blessing and a curse, Chris. I think on one hand, we're allowed to be more efficient. We can do more things, and then we can be more efficient and we can do more things, and that puts more on our plates. I think that with some of the new rules that the Florida Supreme Court has implemented about making sure that deadlines are met, very few continuances under very special circumstances, I think that there are judges out there that want it to go back to the way it was. And while I do miss seeing people at the courthouse with the load that we have, I think it's not realistic. I think that, having trials in person is reasonable, but a 5-minute motion calendar and ruining your whole morning going to Fort Lauderdale or Palm Beach or wherever you're going for 5 minutes when you have so many other deadlines and all that, it's just not possible in this climate. So I think it's been good in that respect, and I think it's been good for clients to be able to do a deposition or a mediation from their home. But I also think that there is some pushback, and I'm hoping cooler heads prevail on that, because it's just not possible to go back to the way it was with these new rules from the Florida Supreme Court.
When you talked about podcasting and how you got into podcasting, I've been doing it for a year, and you were doing this 5 or 6 years ago, or even more, with podcasts and with Zoom. I think you were doing it before I even knew it existed. So let's talk about how you got into podcasts and kind of how that's influenced your communication style, how it's affected you in the courtroom, what you've been able to do, and the impact you've been able to have through podcasting.
Well, believe it or not, I started doing this in 2018, and I learned all the different things with Zoom. I had another platform I was using that's probably not as good as yours because it was 2018. And I just started thinking to myself, I'm very comfortable in front of a camera. I've done this before. How can I do something to stand out from just saying, hey, I'm a personal injury attorney too, like everybody else. So I said, I can go out there and interview other attorneys, other political candidates, and talk to them and give them a flat platform, not charge anything for it or anything like that, but just kind of get out there. And people like content, and I try to give them that, not just do backflips or anything like that. I try to ask questions in my Questions for Lawyers podcast, what you should be asking a lawyer that you're considering hiring for a real estate matter, criminal defense, property damage, all that stuff, anything, family law. And it just worked, and I really enjoyed it. And I think the added bonus is I got a lot closer with certain people that I might not have been able to do otherwise, just because you get kind of personal with this stuff, Chris. People, when you're having these conversations, you learn a lot about them, their background, and even before they come on, just things that you never would have gotten otherwise. And in this climate in particular, it's particularly nice to have that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. Another thing I know that you transitioned, you still practice, but you transitioned into mediation. And I want you to talk about, making that leap from attorney advocate to mediator, wearing those hats and how that's impacted your career.
Well, I've been doing that now for probably about 5 years. And I think one of my first mediations might have been with you,
I
Chris.
believe so too.
So
It was
thank you
awesome.
for taking a chance on me. And we got it done. So that was a good thing. But in any event, with mediation, I find it really rewarding because after doing this for almost 23 years, you get to kind of see how other plaintiffs present, how the defense presents. Sometimes I'm like, ooh, I like that. I'm going to incorporate that in, mine. And then sometimes I'm like, wow, I actually know what I'm doing. I'm actually decent at my job. But it's interesting to get into the other rooms, see what's going on in the insurance room, understanding why maybe I have some problems with certain cases because I see what some of these adjusters are listening to. And I understand why they can get impatient. And then in the other side, I have situations where the plaintiff is not being reasonable. And, as a plaintiff's attorney, there's only so much you can push back with a client. But sometimes I can go in there and say, look, I do what your attorney does. And this is a good offer, or have you considered this? So it's sort of like if somebody needs to wear the black hat, I'd rather it be me because I feel like I'm doing a solid for the plaintiff's attorney and really for the defense also. Because if there's some unreasonable expectation and we know what these cases are generally worth because we're in the community, Chris, somebody's got to tell them. And some attorneys are not, they don't want to do that or they don't want to do it as hard. But with me, I'm a neutral, so it allows me to do that. And I have credibility because of the fact that I've been in that plaintiff's room and I know. And a lot of times the insurance companies like that because I say I speak plaintiff. But I push back on both sides and hope most of the time we get it done. And with the non-binding arbitrations, that's kind of a cool thing to do as well. So we do those too through Boca Mediation Group.
What do you think? What do you think of one of the biggest lessons you've learned, either in running a practice, joining another practice, mediation, podcasting, leadership roles, all the things that you've done for the 23 years? What is like one of the biggest lessons that you've learned over the course of all those experiences?
Well, there's so many, but I would say one of the biggest is got to get mentors early. Get people who you trust so you can call. I mean, look, I'm here with my firm now because Joe Nussbaum and I have been friends for over 20 years. And I would call him for suggestions, advice, and he took the time with me. I had other people that did the same thing. And I remember that. And it's kind of in a weird place now, Chris, because now people are calling me for those things. And I don't hesitate to give back. I'm part of the Florida Bar mentorship program. I definitely think that a lot of who I am is because people took the time with me to show me the right way to do it, to not just come out punching to the defense attorney right out of the gate, understanding everybody has a job to do, and your job is to try to get the case resolved if you can, be ready for trial if that's necessary, but do what's right for the client. And I can't thank enough people like Joe Nussbaum, Jamie Holland, the late Craig Leakash, who helped me. And there's so many more. Ron Shapiro got me involved in a boat. He passed away several years ago. Wonderful guy. And there's so much more, so many more people. And I'm very thankful for that. And then another thing I would say, take advice, but don't think that people know so much more than you also. I think as you get older, you think, oh, the older people, they know what's going on. What I've learned is everyone's going by the seat of their pants. So you're doing okay. Just keep trying and be smart and ask the right people for advice. Not everybody. Ask the right people for advice.
Couldn't agree more with you. I know. So now you're going to take on running for office. You're running for a Coral Springs City Commission. What was the tipping point that made you to decide to run for City Commission?
Well, it's something that I've been interested in for a long time, but I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, whatever. And then I spoke to a few people. Some people asked me if I was interested, and I gave it some thought. And I said, I'm 49 years old. I've been in Coral Springs for 40 years. I went to Hunt Elementary School, Forest Glen Middle School, and Coral Springs High School. And my boys, who were 19 and 16, they were raised in Coral Springs too. This town's been really good to me and my family. And I'm like, you know what? Now's the time for me to give back. I have something to contribute. I have led organizations, and I'm a good listener. I will listen to anybody. I may not agree with you, but I will listen. I will hear you out. And I'm not afraid to change my mind either. But the main thing is, I think that with all of the chaos and nonsense going on in the world today, it's pretty disheartening. I'm not going to lie. But I feel like some of that channeling that angst into doing something good for my community that's been so good to me and my family, I just feel very positive about it. And the people once I've talked about everything, people have just been really warm and receptive to our campaign. And it's been a thrill, Chris. It's something that I don't think anything can really prepare you for, because I'm learning as I go, getting involved in a lot of different committees, going to commission meetings, because look, I want to go in there and I don't want to think that I have all the answers. I want to make sure I'm collecting information and absorbing information so I can make the best decisions for the community. And it's a nonpartisan election too. So sometimes people are like, oh, what's your political affiliation? I'm like, it really doesn't matter, because potholes don't have political parties. That's the type of things that we're dealing with. So I'm willing to reach everybody and be there for every community. And I'm proud of that. And that's something that I've just done throughout my life anyway.
Well, talking about being in Coral Springs for 40 plus years now, what are your priorities going to be if you're elected? What are you going to focus on?
Well, Chris, one of the biggest things people talk to me about is it's called the four corners. Okay. That's 8, but here's 4. And that's Sample Road and University. And a lot of people are very unhappy with some of the construction that's going on there. And there's only so much that we can influence what a builder wants to do, because, look, they own the land and they're allowed to do whatever it's zoned for. But we can give incentives. We can try to influence so that those buildings and shopping areas that they're going to put there are things that Coral Springs people want. Make them walkable. Consider the traffic conditions over there. Just, there's one building in particular, the first one that's gone up, and the plans were changed because of COVID, and it's now mostly apartments. And people thought there was going to be like an outdoor shopping area and all that, and there's a lot of disappointment. So there's 3 other corners there. One of them is built, but they're thinking about other things where the library is. But there's 2 other ones, and I'm hoping that we can influence that so that we have progress. You can't stop progress, but we're smart about it. The other thing that's really important to me, growing up here for 40 years, the parks, greens, the trees, making sure that Coral Springs continues to be a green city. I try to go for walks every morning just to clear my head and start the day off right. I like to go into Betty Stradling Park, North Springs Park. I used to set up road hockey games at JC Park in Pine Ridge, where I grew up. Chris, it was before the Panthers, so I brought all the sticks out there. We grabbed the garbage cans and set them up as the goals. It was very, very primitive, but had a blast. But that's what you should be doing in a community. And so we want to make sure that we preserve those parks, that we preserve areas where people can go out and enjoy that after a long day or before their day starts. We obviously don't want to raise taxes. Nobody wants that. And we want to be smart with the tax money we have and make sure we're using it to keep Coral Springs a safe, family-friendly community. I'm a big proponent of the Coral Springs Police Department. They're a wonderful department. Coral Springs Fire Rescue, again, they do an outstanding job. So we want to make sure that that continues to be the case because that's a big draw for Coral Springs. I mean, we do not have a lot of crime here, and we like to keep it that way. There's 134,000 people living in Coral Springs. I think when my family moved to Coral Springs, it was under 35,000, so it has expanded. Certain things have kept up with the times. Other things could use some improvement, and I want to be part of those solutions. But part of that is making sure that public safety continues to be a top priority, and I'm very proud of the departments that we have in Coral Springs.
How do you see your legal background, being a trial lawyer for 20 years and also having that 5 years of experience to being a mediator, giving you kind of a unique edge in being a commissioner?
Well, that's an interesting question, Chris. I think when people come, maybe you've had this too. Somebody will come up to me, my daughter, my son wants to be a lawyer. They love to argue. It's not really about that all the time. I mean, you are trying to get somebody to do something that you want them to do. And if you come with the mallet and try to hit them over the head with it, that doesn't generally work. I mean, if you want to go to trial on every single case, you can do that. But I don't think your clients want to go to trial in every single case. And again, I'm board certified. I've done that. And it's something you do not because you want to, because you have to. That's what I always tell my clients. Sometimes the insurance companies make the choice easy for you. They're not even close to what you accept, and then you got to do it. But I think that experience and being a good listener and listening to where people are, I think that really helps you. I think that in addition to that, when you listen and people feel heard, then they'll hear you. Maybe you can influence how they're thinking about it. But I think that anybody who thinks they have all the answers, that's not what a good leader does. A good leader may have ideas of what they want to do, but they have to listen. You have to, I know it's a dirty word, you have to compromise. That's how things get done. You can't do it alone. You have to have a consensus. There's 5 people on the commission. I would be one of 5. So I've got to get 2 other people on my side. And most of the time there is agreement, but sometimes there's not. And you'd have to be able to be an honest broker and let people know, look, you've heard them. This is why I feel the way I do. That's what's helped me in law. And I think that will help me if I'm lucky enough to serve on the commission.
I love it. One thing you talked about, and obviously I talk about this podcast a lot, is kind of rising and transforming how we keep ourselves healthy, keep ourselves grounded. You're tackling representing clients and mediating, now running for office, raising kids, all those things. And you talked about your walks in the morning and going into the park. Talk about the things that really help you to stay level-headed through all this, and how you're going to be able to use that to tackle these issues for Coral Springs, for your clients, and for your kids, and for your wife, and everything that you do.
Well, I wouldn't be in a position where I'd feel comfortable to do this without my family. My wife, Jessica, and I have been together since 1997. And she was dating me before I decided to be a lawyer. So she was going to be for the ride if I was traveling all over. Maybe she wouldn't have, I don't know. And we never found out, thank goodness. Traveling all over the country to different jobs every year. Yeah, that's part of the reason I think I decided that law was a little more stable for me. But Jessica's not just because she's my wife, but she is a wonderful, empathetic, caring person. She's actually a licensed clinical social worker. She's a mental health counselor and has her own practice. So she is my rock. I run things by her. I trust her implicitly, and she's my best friend. My boys, Benjamin is a sophomore at UF. That's right, I'm a Seminole, and my son went to UF, but my wife went to UF too. And I'm at peace with it. I'm very proud of him. He's a statistics and computer science double major. He's actually the treasurer of my campaign because he's a math whiz. So I figured, why not? We're very close. And then my son Jacob is a junior. He just started his junior year at Douglas High School, and we are very, very close. My relationships with my children and my wife are the most important things in my life, more important than anything, more important than law, this campaign, anything like that. So I didn't have their support. I couldn't do this. But the fact is, I do have their support. I know that I make them proud. They make me proud. And, this is going to be a family effort. And, I can't leave out the dog, Leia. Leia is very supportive as well. My rescue dog, Leia, who's 11.
Yep. We'll talk about that time that you spend walking and how that helps you to have that clear mind to tackle these types of issues.
Well, when I walk, look, I try to go to the gym too, but usually that's on weekends, and I'm not as diligent as some people, Chris. But the walking in the morning is a good way to clear my head. I do listen to some podcasts in the morning. Optimal Living Daily is a quick podcast. It's like 10 minutes, just kind of being thoughtful and just thinking about ways to manage your brain. I highly recommend it. The other one I really love is the Moth Radio Hour, which is real stories of people. They have different issues going on. Every story is like about 7 minutes, and just real people dealing with either joys or tragedies or just real life situations. And when I listen to all that stuff, it just makes me realize no matter what I'm going through, I'm not alone. Other people have issues, and everyone's carrying something around with them. I think it's really important to have the capacity for empathy, especially today. I went to the Notre Dame FSU game this past year, and while I'm not Catholic, I went into the Basilica at Notre Dame. By the way, if anybody has not been to Notre Dame for a football game, got to do it. Put it on your bucket list. But I went into the Basilica, and I went in front of one of the saints, and they had one of the books open. People were writing their prayers, what they're asking for. It brought me to tears, because you see what you don't see, what people were walking around with. Just somebody's battling cancer, somebody lost a loved one, and they're writing it in there. And it's like, wow, people find the strength to function, to have a brave face, and go on with their day and just do the best they can. And I think that's important to recognize that. And when you talk openly about things going on in your life, I think that it opens the door for other people to feel comfortable to do that. And that's something that I think I've improved on, and it's really improved my relationships with people that I never would have had the chance to have that relationship with.
Well, Jeff, I know that I'm grateful for your friendship and mentorship for me. I'm grateful for you being on this podcast today, and I wish you the best in your campaign. Thank you for joining me today.
Chris, I can't thank you enough for having me on here. And if anybody is interested, the website's very, very complicated. It's jeffadelman.com, jeffadelman.com. And, if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. Would love to talk.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Chris.
Jeff, thank you for joining us today and sharing your journey from the courtroom to the campaign trail and everywhere in between. Your story reminds us that leadership isn't confined to one arena. It's about showing up where you're needed most, whether that's for a client, the community, or a cause. To our listeners, if you want to learn more about Jeff's legal work or his campaign for Coral Springs City Commission, you can find the links in the show notes. Until next time, keep rising, keep transforming, and as always, keep shining your light.